In the heart of many spiritual seekers, a question arises: what does the Bible say about witchcraft? This inquiry takes us to the ancient scriptures, where we find clear perspectives. The Bible, in Deuteronomy 18:10-13, unambiguously warns against practicing witchcraft, indicating a broader spiritual message. It's crucial to understand that witchcraft, as a term, carries different connotations across cultures. In some societies, it's a label for those who manipulate natural forces to achieve desired outcomes. In others, it's synonymous with heresy, a deviation from accepted religious norms. Yet, irrespective of cultural interpretations, the Bible's viewpoint remains steadfast. It discourages any engagement with practices that are seen as witchcraft, urging followers to stay on a path of righteousness and faith. So, as we delve deeper into the scriptures, we find a consistent message, a warning against engaging in witchcraft. Deuteronomy 18:10-13 serves as a stern warning against witchcraft. But what does it really say? Diving deep into this scripture, we uncover a profound message. The passage reads, "There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you. You shall be blameless before the Lord your God." The context here is essential. Deuteronomy is a book of laws and directives given to the Israelites as they prepared to enter the Promised Land. This particular scripture was a societal rule, a divine guideline meant to establish a moral and spiritual boundary for the community. It specifically prohibits practices such as divination, fortune-telling, interpreting omens, sorcery, charming, mediumship, necromancy, and inquiring of the dead. These were all common practices in the pagan cultures surrounding the Israelites, and the directive served as a clear demarcation between them and their neighbors. Scholars and theologians have interpreted this scripture in various ways. Some see it as a sweeping condemnation of all forms of witchcraft. Others, however, argue that it targets specific practices associated with pagan worship, rather than a blanket prohibition of all magical or supernatural activities. Regardless of interpretation, the message is clear. These practices were seen as abominations, actions that were deeply offensive to God. This scripture serves as a stark reminder of the spiritual boundaries set by the divine and the expectations for those who choose to follow this path. As we delve deeper into the Bible's references to witchcraft, we'll see that this theme of caution and avoidance is consistent. Whether it's the story of King Saul consulting a medium, or the Apostle Paul's encounter with a fortune-telling slave girl, the Bible repeatedly stresses the dangers and spiritual consequences of engaging in these practices. Clearly, the Bible's stance on witchcraft is one of caution and avoidance. And as we continue our journey, we'll explore more of these fascinating and complex narratives. So stay tuned, and let's discover together. Deuteronomy isn't the only book in the Bible that mentions witchcraft. Let's explore some other references. In the book of Exodus, specifically chapter 22, verse 18, we read a very explicit command: "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." This direct statement clearly underscores the biblical view on witchcraft. It was seen as a severe transgression, a deviation from God's law that warranted the ultimate punishment. Moving to the New Testament, in the book of Acts chapter 8, verses 9-11, we encounter a man named Simon. Simon was known to use sorcery and bewitch the people of Samaria, claiming that he himself was some great one. The people, both high and low, gave heed to him. This is a clear example of the danger of witchcraft, not just to the individual practicing it, but also to those around them. It's a powerful warning about the potential for deceit and manipulation inherent in witchcraft. Later in Acts chapter 19, verses 18 and 19, many of those who practiced magical arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all. They calculated the value of them and found it came to 50,000 pieces of silver. This passage shows a vivid rejection of witchcraft, a public declaration of turning away from such practices and returning to the path of righteousness. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 20, witchcraft is listed among the acts of the flesh, alongside idolatry, hatred, discord, and others. It's grouped with actions and attitudes that are seen as contrary to the Spirit, further emphasizing the biblical position on the matter. These scriptures echo the same sentiment. Witchcraft is not condoned in the biblical texts. This is seen consistently, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, from Exodus to Acts. The message is clear and unambiguous. Witchcraft is seen as a deviation from the path of righteousness, a practice that leads away from the light of God's grace and into darkness. Misinterpretation can lead to fear and misunderstanding. Let's clarify some common misconceptions. A common pitfall when engaging with ancient texts like the Bible is the tendency to take everything at face value, without considering the historical and cultural context. This can lead to misconceptions, especially when it comes to topics like witchcraft. For instance, it's easy to assume that all magic or supernatural phenomena are considered witchcraft in the Bible, but that's not necessarily the case. It's essential to understand that the term witchcraft, in biblical times, referred to a specific set of practices that were considered harmful and against the will of God. It did not encompass all supernatural phenomena or magical practices. In fact, the Bible is filled with instances of miracles and divine interventions, which are supernatural events, but are not considered witchcraft. Another common misconception is that the Bible's condemnation of witchcraft implies a rejection of all things mysterious or unexplained. This is not true. The Bible encourages a sense of wonder and reverence for the mysteries of the universe. It condemns witchcraft specifically because it was seen as an attempt to manipulate these mysteries for personal gain, rather than respecting and honoring them as expressions of divine power. Context is key in understanding these scriptures. The biblical writers were speaking to a specific audience, in a specific time and place, addressing specific practices that were prevalent in their society. When we read these texts today, we must strive to understand that context rather than imposing our own modern assumptions and interpretations. This doesn't mean that the Bible's teachings on witchcraft have no relevance for us today. Quite the contrary. They serve as a reminder of the dangers of seeking power and control at the expense of respect for the divine and for the natural world. But to fully grasp these teachings, we must approach them with an open mind, free from preconceived notions and misconceptions. As we can see, a careful reading of the scriptures reveals a nuanced view of witchcraft. Understanding the Bible's view on witchcraft not only enlightens us, but also helps us navigate our spiritual journey with wisdom. In this journey, we've traversed the landscape of biblical teachings, unraveled the layers of Deuteronomy 18 verses 10 to 13, and delved into other biblical references to witchcraft. We've seen that the Bible presents a cautionary stance against practices that might divert us from a path of faith and righteousness. We've also explored the dangers of misinterpretation and the importance of context. Words and phrases can take on different meanings over time, and cultural differences can alter our understanding. Thus, it is crucial not to jump to conclusions or make assumptions based on a literal reading. Instead, we must seek to understand the spirit of the text and how it applies to our lives today. This understanding is invaluable for spiritual seekers. It does not serve to instill fear, but rather to guide us, to provide a beacon of wisdom in our spiritual journey. The Bible's teachings on witchcraft remind us that our faith should be placed in the divine, not in practices that promise quick fixes or easy answers. They teach us to be discerning, to question, to seek wisdom and understanding. They remind us that our spiritual journey is a personal one that requires patience, perseverance, and a heart open to divine guidance. With this understanding, we can approach our spiritual journey with a clearer perspective, grounded in wisdom and discernment. Remember, the journey of spiritual discovery is a personal one, and it is important to seek knowledge and understanding to navigate it wisely. Stay blessed and inspired on your journey. In closing, if this journey has brought you value, if it has sparked a light of understanding in your spiritual quest, we invite you to continue with us. Subscribe and let's keep exploring the depths of wisdom together. Continue your journey with us.